course, they need size. A lot of guys want Dario Saric. We want Dario Saric.
I want Dario Saric.
I love Dario Saric.
Like him.
I think one thing that's underrated about him, his IQ. He was a big difference maker in those NBA Finals in terms of tearing his ACL and missing the rest of that series. It depleted the Suns' depth. Yeah, another guy who could finish at the rim. Remember flying back from Philadelphia. Or maybe it was the second OKC game when they went to OKC. But one of the games, Dario Saric was just going in the lane, and he was eating JaMychal Green's lunch. So he's a physical body. He fits what the Warriors want to do in terms of screen setting, the IQ there with the passing. He can step out and hit the three. He's 6'9". He's a big body. You know what? I like Dario Saric, but he's waiting. For the James Harden and Damian Lillard stuff to pass through because he may want to go down to Miami because they may have a little more money left. And that's where you see Malik Beasley. You see some of these guys taking other deals because they're saying, look, the Warriors aren't offering 2 years. I want 2 years. And the Warriors are saying, we want 1 year because this may not work out through the first year. So we'll see what happens with Dario Saric, but they definitely need some size. Bobo got waived yesterday by Orlando. I'm not mad at Bobo.
I wouldn't be mad at that. Bobo. Not that he's the greatest defender by any stretch, but they need bodies. Like, they need they need some length. He'd be someone, I actually think Bobo alongside Chris Paul is not the worst thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. I thought he came up last year. I've talked myself into the Chris Paul. It took about a week, and it's settled in. But I've talked myself into it.
But Chris Paul's going to work. I've talked to myself. It took me a day.
It took me a day. Yeah, it took me an extra 6.
And we'll play some sound. We'll play some sound from Draymond Green. Because he also believes that Chris Paul is going to unlock a certain individual with that second unit. And that's the thing. If they need wing help and everybody's saying they need, because I agree, they need some perimeter defense. Well, maybe you got the guys on your roster. Spinoni and I were talking about this when you were out last Friday. Maybe those signings, those wing defenders, those perimeter players are sitting right there on your basketball team. You just didn't play him last season.
Who?
Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody.
Okay.
Maybe those are your guys that you say, you know what? Bump them up into the top 8, and maybe they take that leap from year 2 to year 3. That's what we're waiting on.
Are we sure that the Warriors aren't going to make any more moves? I mean, do we think that the moves are kind of like everything's kind of getting set in stone? Just seeing the reaction over the weekend, it feels like to me, and again, I don't know what Klay's going to do moving forward, but it feels, the sense I get is Steph, Trey, and Klay are going to be here for the next 3 years.
Yep.
At minimum.
Well, Klay's got the 1 year deal, but it does feel like he's going to be back around. I'm
just saying it feels like that. And stuff can happen. I'm just saying it feels like that. So if that's what they're going to go with and that's their setting, are they just going to, keep the roster around them? Are they going to work with these young guys and try to make the most out of it? Are those pieces that you can get something back that's desirable? I don't know. I think time will tell. I think they're taking it one step at a time. But like Andrew Wiggins, to me, has been so quiet throughout this entire thing. We haven't really discussed him. And to me, he's the big piece that I don't have an answer for because he was their second best player when they won a championship.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
And they need that guy to come back. I think part of the big narrative of this last year, everyone's afraid to talk about it, is, dog, you missed 50 games. And then when you came back, you were working yourself into shape. Look, and I'm not saying that I'm mad, but that is baked into why you were so underwhelming as a team this year, is you were missing one of the most important players. If I wrote a template last year, Bonte, and I said to you, B, if they want to repeat or at least get back to, the finals or the Western Conference Finals, Andrew Wiggins would be what? The second? Third most important part of if you're writing things down on paper?
Well, I think in that championship run, he was the second most important piece because you get a guy who's guarding Luka Doncic in the Western Conference Finals and dominating Luka Doncic. You get a guy who stays in front of Ja Morant at times. And then, I'm telling you, Game 6, Andrew Wiggins had all my respect Game 6 against Memphis. He went down on the block, and he was battling with guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark in the paint. Like, we all remember Game 6 against Memphis for Kevon Looney. And, of course, Klay Thompson hit some big threes in that game. Steph woke up late. But Andrew Wiggins played like a grown-ass man in that game. And I said, oh, boy, he can get down and rebound on the glass. He could go out there and get tough and get physical with guys. Andrew Wiggins' ascension during that postseason run, I think, woke everybody up and said, whoa, there's the untapped potential that we saw coming out of Kansas when he was the number 1 overall pick. And so when you think about what he did last year, only playing in those 37 regular season games, and yet they win 44, and everything going on around the Golden State Warriors, I think people when the Warriors release a documentary, when they go back in time to talk about last season, or if Draymond Green chirps about last season, or Jordan Poole opens up about last season, I don't think the casual fan or even fans that are not in that locker room realize how much of a mess the Warriors were last year internally. So when you miss Andrew Wiggins for 2 months and you still win 44 games, that's a 50-win team if Andrew Wiggins plays, say, 73 games, because he's played in at least 71 games with the exception of last season.
Well, and I'm glad you're bringing that up because, B, like, there's all this, like, weird, like, anybody, you talk about Andrew Wiggins, and I feel like there's just, like, this cloud around it where it's like, hey, you're not allowed to talk about Andrew Wiggins. It's like, all right, well, that's the privacy issue of why he was gone.
Right.
But he was gone for 50 games, and they needed him. And again, if I was writing the script for how the Warriors would repeat or get back to where they were the year prior, Andrew Wiggins would be the second or third name that I would write down on a piece of paper. So while you're worried about privacy and worrying about you can't talk about it. No, dude, we need Andrew Wiggins. So yes, they need him desperately.
Well,
and
listen,
more and more I'm thinking about this year and Chris Paul and Draymond coming back, it's
Andrew Wiggins is a huge key. Huge key. And I think people forget. When Andrew Wiggins started the season off, he picked up where he left off in the NBA Finals. Before he got hurt with the right adductor strain. Remember that? He got the right adductor strain back on December 3rd. He was coming off a huge performance against the Houston Rockets. He scored 36 points, hit 8 threes, and up until that point, the first 22 games of the season for Andrew Wiggins, 19 points, 5 rebounds. He was shooting 45% from 3 and 51 from the floor. Yeah. And I was sitting here on these airways saying he's going back to Salt Lake City for the All-Star game for a second straight All-Star game appearance. Then he suffered the right adductor strain. He got sick, and he was never the same since. He was never the same since. So Andrew Wiggins is huge. Huge. So you get Andrew Wiggins there. So you get your starting 5 back with Looney, Draymond, Wiggins, Clay, and Steph. We'll see if Chris Paul starts, whatever. I personally, the whole start-sit thing.
It's so overrated.
I'm over it. Yeah. I'm over it now. I don't care. You got your 5. You got Chris Paul who's going to run that second unit. All right? You got your second unit. And here's the thing about Jordan Poole. As much as I love Jordan Poole, and I was looking at old photos, and I was like, damn, look at the Jordan Poole from Media Day. We're joking around, and I'll show you during the break. Or I'll tweet it out for all the fans out there, all the roasters out there. But Jordan Poole turned the ball over the 4th most times in the NBA. I can't unsee that. Settling down the second unit, playing fast, playing slow. Jordan Poole's erratic. And look, again, we know why he was erratic. We understand why he was erratic.
He shares culpability independent of the Draymond situation. But he deserves culpability for his play.
He was unplayable.
I agree with that.
In the Lakers series and the Kings series, Jordan Poole was unplayable.
Agreed.
Chris Paul, if he makes scared, if he's healthy, and he's playing 25 to 30 minutes a game, the assist-to-turnover ratio is huge, and that's what Steve Kerr's looking for. And then unlocking Jonathan Kuminga, like Draymond Green mentioned on Podcast P's, Paul George's podcast.
Oh.
It's not bad. Not bad. It's not a bad podcast at all. Spadoni, if you got the sound, here's Draymond Green, Podcast P. Here's what Draymond Green said about Chris Paul unlocking Jonathan Kuminga. And it's right.
I actually look forward to learning this from him. I think Chris Paul will completely unlock Jonathan Kuminga and his growth. CP is great with young guys. DeAndre Ayton looked like a bust before CP came to Phoenix.
Facts.
No disrespect to Ayton, but more so a nod to CP.
Yeah.
Like,
more of a threat.
People didn't know what they were like, what DeAndre Ayton was going to turn out to be, and then CP went there. And all of a sudden, DeAndre Ayton became an all-star level player.
Right.
And so I think what he will do for Jonathan Kuminga and unlocking Kuminga is huge.
Amazing.
Absolutely huge. And I look forward to learning that from him. He's always been incredible at mentoring young guys. And that is an area that I've wanted to grow in because it's one that I kind of got thrusted into.
And so you bring in Chris Paul, who's desperate for a championship. He's desperate to live up to this $30 million contract and see if the team will like to pay him $15, $20 million next year because it doesn't seem like he's retiring anytime soon. And there's some truth to that. I remember his OKC season in the bubble. He helped those guys and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Lou Dort become professionals. I'm warming up to Chris Paul, and if he could unlock Jonathan Kuminga, there's another wing defender. There's another guy who could potentially finish a game for you next to Andrew Wiggins or Draymond Green defensively. Look, Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody are playing for the next contract. We see Anthony Edwards, we see LaMelo Ball, we see Tyrese Halliburton sign these supermax extensions for $240, $250, $260 million. Well, Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody are playing for some big-time cash this season. And I think Chris Paul being there with them, learning how to be a professional, cutting, going to the rack, playing smart basketball and picking up the slack for CP3 on defense, I'm kind of with Draymond Green in that sense in terms of Chris Paul unlocking JK. And I'm gonna add Moses Moody to that equation as well.
Yeah, I think Moses Moody can fit really well in this. I was really high on Moses Moody heading into last year, and I don't know what happened. I really don't. The CP3 Kuminga thing is obvious, and when Draymond is alluding to how much he can help him grow, we're all nodding our head like, yeah, I could see, because I could visualize the alley-oops. I could visualize the backdoor cuts. Think of these two players, and I'm going way back in the Warrior machine. To me, when Biedrins had Baron Davis, he was a different player.
Oh, he's a double-double machine.
The second they lost the facilitator in the half court, Andres Biedrins became almost unplayable.
Done.
Okay, now this is going way back 15 years ago, right? And I do believe there are certain players, especially the bigs and young players, that absolutely need someone to set them up. I mean, we see this across the league. Not a lot of guys are be able to get their own shot, especially in this offense. Right. This offense is very unique. The part that I think everyone missed was at the very end of Draymond, which to me was like, wow, about time. He took a little bit of accountability, basically saying that he's done a poor job developing the youngsters. And I don't think I mean developing them physically. I'm talking about nurturing them mentally and emotionally. And that, to me, was an encouraging sign. I think with him so worried about his contract and his extension and his sustainability on this organization, giving him that 3-year deal with the player option for the 4th year, it at least calms things down and allows him to get back to what we wanted him to be, which was someone who could help mentor and nurture these young players.
And I think he's going to learn a lot from last season. Draymond Green.
I mean, he has
to learn a lot from last season. He also mentioned in that podcast, too, I think that got swept under the rug, especially on Twitter, because we're all salivating over the CP3 soundbite, was him talking about, having Kevin Durant here and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry where he didn't shoot it and he kind of lost his confidence in shooting. I think he's going to be more aggressive next season. I think offensively, I think Draymond, well, now what does that look like? I'm not saying he's going to score 20 points a game, but I'm saying if he could get into that 12 to 14 range and at least be a threat, because now I can envision with Chris Paul's on the floor and Draymond Green's making those backdoor cuts because everybody is selling out to go guard Steph or selling out to go chase lock and trail Klay Thompson on the perimeter, that Draymond Green could slip back door and get some easy layup opportunities. Now, he's got to finish at the rim, and we know that's been an issue for him, but I expect him to be a lot better. This is a huge, huge year for Draymond Green to say, and you know what? Part of it too, Shasky, we don't see this in sports. Guys basically trying to retire together after winning multiple championships. In a way, this is kind of cool to see. What is the last chapter going to look like with these three? The most decorated trio in NBA history. What does the last chapter look like? And now you got a chapter that involves Chris Paul?
It's kind of wild.
It's kind of wild here.
Well, and I think, we'll get into the Draymond contract and the kind of the domino effect of everything, of him coming back. But taking less than what everyone thought he was going to get.
Right, 25.
Right, I think that matters. I really do. I think that him taking less is a big thing for the organization. It clearly saves them money when it comes to the luxury tax. It shows that he's willing to play ball. Do I still think it's probably an overpay? Yeah, probably overpaid compared to market value and all those things. But, if you're going to overpay someone, it better be one of the legends. And if even the biggest Draymond hater can admit, Dre's one of the legends. Right?
No doubt.
So overpaying for one of your own who is a legend, who gets to retire a Warrior, hopefully. Like all those things to me override whatever million here, million there that you think he's overpaid.
No doubt about that.